I'm Petronella. I'm a nutritional therapist. I trained at the Institute for Optimum Nutrition in London, and I've had my own private practice in Chelsea for close on 20 years. And I'm proud to say that I'm also the author of The Human Being Diet. So why am I a nutritionist? Why did I get involved in nutrition? Well, it's a funny thing, but when we were training, nearly everybody was there because either they or somebody they loved had had a health problem that couldn't get, that the doctors couldn't solve. So they thought they'd take matters into their own hands and see what they could do. My personal reason was my son. And when he was little, he was ill a lot with tonsillitis and nasty little respiratory tract infections. And I took him to the doctors and they gave him antibiotics, and I was very ignorant at the time and had no idea what the long-term effects of the antibiotics would be. But actually he got iller. He didn't get better at all. So then I started trying different things. So I took him to acupuncturists and homeopaths and herbalists and all sorts of people, and everything helped. I'm not saying it didn't help, but it was a little reset, and then he went back and he was ill again. And I was reading up, I went into bookshops and picked up all the books on health I could find. But one day, and I really remember this, I was standing in Waterstones, and it was a sunny day like it is today, an autumn day. And I picked up this book by Patrick Holford, and I was flicking through it and seeing that he'd written about mouth ulcers, which my son also suffered with, and colds and flu and things like that. And I just had this feeling that this was something different. And so I obviously paid for the book, took it home, read up on it, changed my son's diet. So I took him off wheat and dairy and started giving him probiotics and things like zinc and vitamin C. And he started to get better. And actually from the time we changed his diet, he never had another course of antibiotics. So wow, that is amazing. And then I found myself reading more than I needed to for him anyway, because I found the whole thing so fascinating. And I was flicking through a book a little while later, and I looked, I don't know why, at the back page, and on the back page was something like a sort of advertisement saying, "Are you interested in a career in nutrition?" And my hair literally stood on end, and I thought, wow, that'd be amazing. Because you think, well, that's the kind of thing that other people do. And it never occurred to me that I could train and I could actually work in nutrition. And it was the Institute for Optimum Nutrition, and I went along with trepidation for my interview, thinking they'd say, oh no, you're not the right sort of person at all. And they said, yes, well, you can sign up for the foundation course, starting this autumn, whenever. And so I did, and after that, really, there was no looking back. I have to say, coming out of that course, it was a 3-year course, I realised that I didn't know anything about any of it. And it's not until I started working with people and putting it into practice that I realised what amazing tools I had, and that, getting the right nutrition can really be life-changing. It's, a complete gift. Such an amazing realisation. So I work with lots of people, and really it's the people who came to see me who taught me all I know now, because they come with different situations and different problems, and obviously they'd be different personalities, and I had to find something that would work for that individual person, which led me eventually, sort of 20 years later, to putting everything they'd taught me into a book about what I found worked for them. So it's it's a real kind of give and take story, situation. It's I think we very often find that when we help people, that we get something back in return. It might not be what we expected, but it makes us feel good too. I think it's Richard Dawkins who wrote that book, The Selfish Gene, who said actually we're all deeply selfish, and we do things for other people, and it might look like we're being unselfish and kind and generous, but actually it makes us feel good too. So that was how I came to nutrition. It was an amazing course. I really enjoyed it. I realised that I needed to learn a lot more, and was always doing CPD, continuous professional development, which is a requisite for our governing body, BANT anyway. And then I also did an amazing training with the Natura Foundation in something called clinical psychoneuroimmunology, which basically pulls the whole thing together. You can't just change somebody's diet and think, well, they're going to get better. You know, we're human beings, we're complicated. We operate on, you know, not just on chemical, you know, nutritional levels, but on, you know, emotional levels and immunological levels, and, you know, that just pulled everything together. And I met some amazing people, and we get together whenever we're allowed to now. And, you know, we've got a sort of busy WhatsApp group, you know, exchanging stories and research papers. And talking about research, it's an interesting area because there's something called translational research. I think that's right, I'll have to look it up, which basically means that it takes 20 years for science in a lab and a scientific paper to reach the doctor's office or the doctor's clinic. So all we know now about, or a lot of what we know about gluten, came from a genius scientist called Alessio Fasano. And it's a funny story. He was working on a cholera vaccination, and he was very excited about it, and it was almost ready, and he tested it on animals, and he was ready to test it on human beings, but it didn't work, and he got very depressed. But then he started thinking about the mechanism, about this leaky gut mechanism, and he realized actually that gluten makes everybody's gut leaky. And we know now that leaky gut is at the bottom of, you know, so many of our health ailments. So, you know, to start getting better, you know, with anything, you know, whether it be, you know, skin or you know, depression or, you know, immune system, we have to work on the gut first. Which is why I suggest to everybody, basically, they cut out gluten. And that was part of our homework when we were studying, was to get rid of gluten for 2 weeks. Actually, it wasn't even gluten, it was wheat, for 2 weeks, and then reintroduce it. So have, like, by the way, you couldn't even have a speck of wheat. And we realised that wheat was in everything, in licorice and soy sauce and sausages and everything else. But that was a long time ago. It's much easier now to avoid wheat. And then on day 15, to have 2 Weetabix on an empty stomach, i.e. for breakfast, you know, with, rather than milk, because that could have changed the outcome, with water or fruit juice or something, and just see how we felt over the next 3 days. And every single person had an adverse effect. You know, some people felt terrible joint pain, some people came out in hives or, you know, big sort of horrible spots, some people got diarrhea, other people got constipation, some got neither constipation nor diarrhea, they got massive bloating. Personally, I got so depressed that I couldn't get out of bed the next day, and I had no idea that wheat was doing that to me. So I thought, well, thank you. Talk about clear feedback from your body. So that was it. And another thing I noticed when I stopped wheat was, apart from that 4 o'clock energy gone feeling, got to find a biscuit or a cup of coffee, that was gone. My energy was much, much better. But the other thing that was really funny was I used to have dark circles under my eyes, and every morning I put the concealer on. And I was doing that one morning, it was about 2 months after stopping wheat, and I said to myself, why are you doing that? You don't need that concealer anymore. So that was another really good, sort of very unexpected side effect. So there are all sorts of reasons why it's a good idea to try going wheat-free, or even better, gluten-free for a while, because it's not until you take something out and reintroduce it that you see what it's actually doing to you. And probably what it's doing to you is not pretty, not good. So, you know, just get rid of it. And then you can try, you might want to try, if you go completely gluten-free, try not the Weetabix, but try a piece of rye bread, 100% rye, and see how you do with that. And then, but wait for not just immediate effects, but it can take 2 or 3 days. So wait for 3 days. You might, you know, keep a note of anything that you feel. And if that's okay, try spelt bread or whatever, or, you know, some of the gluten-free grains before you try wheat, because modern wheat is bred to contain a lot of gluten, because that makes the bread lighter and fluffier and the dough's more elastic, so it's easier to work with. Then it's gluten really that's no good for us human beings. So that's a little challenge. Other thing, always thinking about, coming back to gut health, is our little microbes. You know, it's very hard to imagine what they might look like, or, you know, that they're there at all really, because we think bacteria, ugh, yuck. But actually they are responsible for our immune system working as it should, you know, for our energy. They make vitamins for us. They help to give energy to our liver and our digestive system. So they help with detoxing and all sorts of things. And they're super busy all the time, which is one of the reasons why it's a good idea to have 3 meals a day or less, have 1 meal a day, because it's only when we're fasting that they're able to get on with their incredible housekeeping jobs. So it's quite an interesting thought when you think sitting down thinking about what am I going to have for lunch today, rather than what would I like for lunch today, think about what would they like for lunch today. So their favourite food is vegetables, any kind of herbs, green vegetables, root vegetables. It's the fibre from all those different vegetables that makes them super happy. And each vegetable fibre is beloved by a different kind of microbe. So if every day we have, broccoli and carrots for lunch, we're only feeding a very narrow margin of those microbes. So it's really a question of thinking about how can I add more, different kinds of fibres. I can add rosemary to that, or basil, or oregano, or thyme, or I could have some cabbage for a change. I could add some garlic and some onions and some leeks and some avocado. And it's quite an interesting thing. At the beginning of lockdown, Ricardo and I thought, right, we're going to eat at least 30 different types of vegetable and herb every week. And it's harder than you think, because most of us get stuck on 3 or 4 or 5. So that's a really good challenge. To add to the getting rid of the gluten challenge, try thinking about 30 different vegetables every week, including herbs, to feed a huge, wide array of different microbes in your body, because they all do different things for us. The other thing they really love is olive oil. And I was talking to Donna about it on one of her lives that we do. And olive oil, we kind of got confused by it, and we thought, oh, we weren't supposed to cook with it. But actually, it's perfectly fine to cook with olive oil. So olive oil is full of these polyphenols or polyphenols. I'm not quite sure how you say it. And they are particularly beloved by a particular microbe called Akkermansia. And Akkermansia, it sounds very creepy, but what it does is it nibbles away at the lining of the gut. And therefore it makes it more resilient. It's a bit like, trimming your box hedge or whatever. It's actually good for it. It might feel a bit destructive, but it's what the hedge needs. And it's the same thing with Akkermansia. And coming back to the idea that we couldn't cook with olive oil, it was because it was deemed too delicate. But actually, the better the olive oil, the more extra virgin it is, the more antioxidants it contains, the more it's protected from the heat. So we're not talking about deep fat frying at home. We're talking about, sautéing things or roasting things. So don't worry about it. Use the best quality olive oil you can afford, and your microbes will really thank you for that. And talking about microbes and olive oil and thinking about polyphenols and antioxidants, we need to also think about inflammation, because inflammation really is at the root cause of all our chronic modern diseases, from heart disease to type 2 diabetes to depression. And whether or not we're in a state of inflammation is very much in our own hands. So, things that we can do for ourselves to reduce inflammation, apart from eating well, eating lots of vegetables, a little bit of fruit. We always talk about fruit and veg. It's actually the veg that are really important. But fruit, so berries particularly, eating our apple every day, those are all things that can naturally help the body to reduce inflammation. Inflammation is our body's natural response to any kind of trauma. But we didn't know that our body views sitting down for long periods of time as a trauma. It's like a danger signal, because us human beings weren't designed to sit down for long periods of time. And in fact, one of our teachers in the Psychoneuroimmunology lessons, the main professor, Leo Prumbun, he came back one day. We hadn't seen him for, we'd had a break in the course, we hadn't seen him for a few weeks. And he came and he said, "My dear students, I'm so sorry. I must tell you, I had no idea I've been slowly killing you with this, sedentary death syndrome. You've been sitting down for too long." And he made us get up literally every half an hour and do some press-ups or some push-ups or some star jumps, which felt quite disruptive, but we all felt very energized by it. So that was a really good thing to do. Coming back to causes of inflammation, one of the main things that's happened to our food supply in the last, 20 years or so, is that it's become very heavy in omega-6 fats and too light in the omega-3 fats. Part of the reason for that is that we used to eat meat us meat eaters, from cows who ate grass. So they were high in omega-3. The meat was high in omega-3. Now we eat meat from cows that are fed on grains, which is omega-6. So getting the omega-6, omega-3 ratio is absolutely critical to address our inflammation levels. So how do we get more omega-3? Eat grass-fed meat. Most lamb, I think, is naturally grass-fed because you can't mess about with sheep too much. They don't do well unless they're out eating grass. But think also about chickens and eggs, free-range organic, because if they're not free-range and they're not organic, they'll definitely be eating poor-quality omega-6 grains. If they're free-range and organic, we've got to hope that they are pecking about eating things that chickens are supposed to eat, which, I know it sounds gross, but, slugs and worms and things like that. Eat more fish. Eat more seafood. And if you hate fish and you hate seafood, because I have seen people who just wouldn't touch fish, just take omega-3, supplements. And if you're vegan, you can still take omega-3, but you need to take omega-3 supplements from algae. That's fine. It's not quite as good as fish oil, but it's still going to be really, really good for you. And it's good for our brain, as well as, inflammation. There's a brilliant paper called Cytokines Sing the Blues, which I think came out in about 2004. And it was the link between inflammation, which we know is lack of omega-3, too much omega-6, too much sitting about, poor diet, and depression. Because when we're in a state of inflammation, we create all these hormones, cytokines, that are associated with depression. So it's really, really important. And then, of course, things like not getting enough sleep. Sleep is very important for our skin, we know that. And it's the time when we're actually in repair mode. So the immune system, when we're awake, should be quiet, because the immune system and the brain can't work together because they're too expensive, metabolically speaking. So the brain's active during the day, the immune system is quiet. But when our brain goes to sleep at night, when it really turns everything down, our immune system comes to life, and it's like it's prowling around, looking for any nasty little pathogens that might have got in, but also doing its repairing work. And what it uses for fuel when we're asleep is it breaks down fat. So sleep is not only time for our skin repair and all the other repair in our body to take place, it's also our fat burning time. So we need to really, really get strict. And I know it's really hard, and I'm guilty of this myself, to really turn our phones off and put them on flight mode when we get to bed, or turn them off altogether, and have at least an hour before bed when we're free of electronics. We're reading a book, we're not watching the telly, or we're meditating. We're doing something to get us really into the right frame of mind for sleeping, and to make sure that our bedrooms are dark as possible, with blackout blinds. Why as dark as possible? Because that's when we need the darkness to create this, to release melatonin from the pineal gland, which is right in the front of our head, because melatonin is the sleep hormone. So the darker our room is, the more melatonin we're going to produce, the better, the deeper, the more refreshing our sleep's going to be. And why cool? Because I think that our body, I can't remember how many degrees it is, but it naturally cools down, and it needs to cool down before we go to sleep, which is one of the reasons that an Epsom salt bath can be a really beneficial thing before bed, because it's heating the body up, which means the cool down after the heating up is more dramatic, which puts us, or can put us into a deeper stage of sleep. And by the way, a lot of people put a tablespoon of Epsom salts into their bath at night, say, this stuff doesn't do anything at all. What we need is like 4 or 5 cupfuls, like a pound of Epsom salts, and then soak for 10 minutes or longer, but at least 10 minutes, and then dry ourselves off and hop straight into bed with a nice book and maybe a cup of nice tea or hot water or something like that. And we know that lack of sleep means that we feel hungrier and less resilient the next day, and we tend to be hungry for carbohydrates. So let's do as much as we can to get as much good quality sleep as we possibly can. Exercise. Everybody says, we've got to exercise till we feel sick if we want to lose weight. Not true. Matt Rudd, who's a journalist for the Sunday Times, woke up one day and he said, this is the year I'm going to develop the body of an Adonis. I'm going to get rid of all this flabby stuff and turn it into muscle. And he went to see somebody, he got his body composition analysed, and he went away and he joined lots of classes where, funnily enough, he seemed to be the only bloke there, and they were high intensity, spinning and, high intensity gym classes. And he did as much as he possibly could, and he went back a few months later to see this guy who'd done his body composition analysis. And he said, well, good news is, you've lost weight, you're much lighter than you were. But the bad news was, to his horror, Matt found that he'd burnt through his muscles. He was actually fatter than he was before, and he weighed less because he had less muscle. Because let's remember that, extreme exercise is just another stressor. Haven't we got enough stress already? We're faced with stress from all directions. So now and then, if you enjoy it, it's fine. Go for the really heavy exercising. But, if you're exercising to lose weight, remember that we lose weight when we're asleep, and we lose weight with long duration, low intensity exercise. So things like walking. Walking is our original exercise. And remember, we didn't walk for fun in our caveman days. We walked because we had to. We walked because we were hungry, or we were thirsty, or we were looking for shelter, or we were looking for somewhere else to camp. We did it out of necessity, not because we wanted to. That's part of the problem, this mismatch with who we are today, modern humans, and where we came from. So walking, if we were hungry, we had to exercise to find some food. We had to exercise to find the solution to our problem. Now what we do is we open the fridge door. So that's a really good thing to do, and Leo told us, always try and do a bit of exercise before you eat, because that fits in with our physiology, our genes. So even if it's just doing like 20 press-ups, 30 squats, whatever, running up and down the stairs a few times, it's always a good thing to do, because that also lessens the inflammation that's produced when we eat things. Why do we produce inflammation when we eat things? Because when we eat things, our immune system is activated. Our immune system is not going to just sit by when something is coming in through our mouths that potentially could get into our body and cause us a big problem. The immune system is there, by the gut, seeing what's coming in. Is this friend or foe? And actually think about the immune system. A massive amount of the job of the immune system is to say, actually, this is all right. I'm going to let this stuff through. I'm not going to react to this. And a big part of what's going on now with our increasing allergies and problems with all sorts of foods is our immune system has gone AWOL because we've taken so many antibiotics, and we're eating food that's laced with antibiotics, and we're eating processed food rather than live, natural, whole, foods, vegetables that actually speak to our DNA and sort of turn off the genes that turn inflammation on. So there's this constant interaction between what we're eating, our outside environment, and our inside, our microbes, and our immune system, and what's coming in, is it friend or foe? And Graham Rook at UCL describes our friendly microbes as our old friends, and they really are our old friends. And a lot of those old wives' tales, things like eat your greens, get your roughage, are good for us because they're good for our microbes. Our microbes need that fibre. They need that fibre for food so that they can get on and do all the amazing jobs they do for us. So let's think about sleep, maximising our sleep, doing all we can to prepare for a good night's sleep, turning off our phones, having Epsom salt baths, taking magnesium, the ultimate relaxation aid, sleep aid, but really making every calorie count. So when we're sitting down to eat, thinking, what would I feel like eating? But what those microbes feel like eating? They love vegetables, lots of different vegetables, herbs, spices, lean protein, lots of omega-3, fish, shellfish, things like that. Organic whenever possible, meat, chicken, eggs. We're going to do some exercise, but we're going to find the kind of exercise that we enjoy doing, not the kind of exercise that we're doing because we think we have to do it because otherwise we'll never lose the weight or whatever it is. We're going to spend time in the fresh air, communing with nature, looking at the sky, feeding the ducks, things like that. And when we're allowed to, spending time with our friends, because we are still tribal creatures. We need our our tribe around us. We need our family and the people we love. And getting busy, creative, in the kitchen, and again thinking about all those amazing herbs. And we can grow those herbs on our windowsills. We don't even need a garden, which is really exciting. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you and to hearing what you'd like to know more about. And let's keep the conversation going.